Welcome to the San Francisco Living Wage and Trabajo Cultural Caminante Concert for Juarez fundraiser event. Tonight, we hope you enjoy the concert, but at the same time, we're going to have some great speakers that discuss more on the issues that are affecting workers in Mexico, and it's definitely affecting here in the United States. Now, I'm going to bring my other co-host to the stage, Nancy Esteva.
Desde que estemos aquí unidos para tomar un poco de información de lo que nos está pasando aquí en la misión, aparte de lo que está pasando en todo el país, ¿verdad? Pero nosotros en Living Wage nos queremos organizar para que sepan que nosotros sí vamos a estar organizados para cuando venga la migración aquí, que vamos a estar preparados, que nos vamos a estar uniendo con otros lugares. Y nosotros tengo una cosa muy importante que tengo que anunciar, es que van a pasar al rato una tarjeta en la que dice que sí nos estamos resistiendo a la migra, ¿verdad? Y toda esa información las van a colectar para pasárselas al City Hall. Y eso es todo. Estamos teniendo unos talleres para educar a las personas sobre qué es lo que está pasando y cómo responder en caso de que la migración llegue a la casa.
There's the refrain, ahí está el coro, multilingual, para todos, ready. La 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 la, la 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 la, la la Look, we already know that Trump is a sick guy. All right, I'm not gonna waste time. We already been angry enough with all the idiocies he's done. We know he's sick. The bus driver's drunk, we're all on the bus. We're not gonna kill him, we're gonna crash. We'll crash, right? Our job is to get him off that bus, and he just simply represents what we have allowed to happen in this country. We have allowed the politicians and the capital, people with capital, to make of this country the drunk uncle of the world. The drunk uncle of the human family that jumps into the living room, breaks the lampshade, jumps into the kitchen, breaks the table, screams at everybody, and runs out on his binge. That's what we have allowed to happen. But as in other periods, we, the working class, we, the working people, the people who've made this microphone, this carpets, these lights, those butacas, chairs, whatever they're called, that little instrument there, the videos, these lights, we have made everything that's here. And we've made it from what? From the earth. So our job is to get into the strength of our people, the strength of the father of my good brother here, Frank Martin del Campo, who was the champion tie seller for, was it Sears or JCPenney? Sears, Ropac and Company, made millions for those people. Why? Because we are the strength of this country. We are the strength of the world. We are the world. We are the world. Entonces, we've made a difference. We are organizing and we're coming, we're going, we're making change, continually making change. So it's not about what the addict does. We know what the addict does. We all know him. In my town, his name was Mingo, and he was a little off, and and when they're harmless, well, you have compassion and you work with the folks, verdad, who are off. But this guy is not unarmed, is disarmed. He's got the button on the nuclear power. He's got the ability to cause a lot of havoc. So we do need a wall. We need a wall around the Trump administration. It's called quarantine. Or, in other words, it's called a straitjacket. How we're going to build that wall is by organizing, by doing these small events. And what I mean by that is the following song. Our children are sacred, nuestros niños son sagrados. Children are beautiful, bellos son. Our children are gifts, son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred, sagrados son. Nuestros niños son sagrados. Our children are beautiful, bellos son. Our children are gifts, son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred, sagrados son. Let me hear you. Our children are sacred. Nuestros niños son sagrados. Our children are bellos son. Our son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred, sagrados son. Y aquí están, cruzando fronteras. Y aquí están, trayendo la verdad. Son la voz de Dios y nuestra conciencia, pues por la violencia cruzando están. Children are sacred, nuestros niños son sagrados. Our children are beautiful, bellos son. Our children are gifts, son el regalo más amado. Children are sacred, sagrados son. Yeah, now here they come, eyes wide open. llenos de esperanza, de una vida con ganas de amar, pues son las maestras, doctores, artistas, madres ingenieras de un mundo de paz. Our children say, nuestros niños son sagrados, children are beautiful, bellas son. Our children are gifts, son el regalo más amado. Our children are sacred, sagrados son. Our children are sacred, sagrados. Our children are sacred. We welcome and embrace the families and give them a love. Our children are sacred. We declare sanctuary, yeah, building bridges, not a wall. Sagrados son, vamos, sagrados son, sagrados son, otra vez, sagrados son, por eso vamos a cuidarlos, quererlos, amarlos, sagrados son. So I want to invite my good friend Alice, who's got a wonderful poem.
I wrote this poem for a project about women's labor history. I just happen to have it with me. And it's called Merging. In Valerian books, I find old union documents. Once there was a women's local, the Women's Bindery Union. Finishing books, open a spine, open fading pages of a 1937 agreement. In 1917, the men and women's locals merged into one. In 1917, women didn't have the federal vote. In 1917, they said men would take care of the family. If one merges into one, becomes the same, one would think equal, but the cards in the women's game are eights, not aces. Half votes, less pay. Men per week, $51. Women per week, $25. Man apprentice, first month, $13. Second, $22. Third, $30. But woman apprentice, first month, $10, second, $18, and third, $21. Long rows of books, the covers, red, brown, yellow, all done the same.
Muchas gracias y muy buenas noches. Good evening, everyone. I was asked to share some experience of California unionists in the struggle against NAFTA before it was ever passed, and to also share the view of Morena, a party that's now leading in the polls in the Mexican presidential election. Thank you. And that in itself is a great promise for the Mexican people, but also for the people of the United States. Because when we're faced with a government of racists, and thank you, Nancy, for raising it, we've got to call it what it is. When we're facing a government which is organizing racists, right, which is the pivotal point of organizing hate, racism against, to scapegoat immigrants, we need allies. And when there's a pro-labor, pro-people government in Mexico, it serves the interest of the Mexican people for equality and democracy and sovereignty, but it also serves the interest of the North American people and all people who reside in the North Americas, because we have an ally to be able to work with to defend our own interests at this critical time. But the subject at hand is the issue of the North American Free Trade Agreement, and what we have is available, I don't know if it's in print out here, but we have it available electronically, is a labor report that we made when we did a delegation of trade unionists that went to Mexico prior to NAFTA to discuss NAFTA with our unionists on the other side of the border and to solicit their views. What was most significant about this delegation was in the early 1990s was that Bush and Carlos Salinas de Gortari had just announced that there was going to be a free trade agreement. In this country, absolutely no one knew anything about the free trade agreement. Zip, nobody. It was a blurb on the screen. When we went to Mexico, everybody knew about it. El Bolero, the shoe shine guy. We'd asked him about NAFTA. He knew everything about it. Right? He knew the promises, and he knew the BS, and he had already figured it out by then. But the important part is what did the labor movement put forward at that time? The AFL-CIO stated before we left, the problems of poverty and economic development in both the U.S. and Mexico are too serious to be left to the interest of private capital. What did the Mexican unionists tell us? Well, their thoughts were that we need to organize a convention of all unionists in the North Americas, right? To speak about how we can protect labor's interest, working class's interest in each one of these countries. Regretfully, we were not, that view did not prevail, and while there were talks that were not sufficiently deep and rich and profound to be able to produce the kind of coordinated actions unions need to take on behalf of the workers and the people. In particular, ESME, then led by Jorge Sanchez, was pointing out that he was the one who was strongest around the issues, right, of having union unity and action on the matters, and he was the clearest. Significantly, ESME was a victim of privatization, the union, and it led a heroic struggle. The last point I'd like to mention here is that in our report that was written in the early 1990s, we suggested that dropping barriers to investments and creating a, quote, level playing field for trade and investment might also mean, for instance, privatizing publicly held companies or elimination of social welfare measures deemed to be uncompetitive. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Did it happen only in Mexico? No. That's a neoliberal economic project that's happening throughout Latin America and which is being resisted by the countries of Latin America and will continue. The next question I would like to raise is a political question. Well, let me go to the agenda, the platform. I have here a platform of Morena, and it's significant because one of the things we point out, Morena es una organización política amplia, plural, incluyente y de izquierda, con principios, programa y estatutos. Morena is a political organization, broad, plural, inclusive, and left, with principles, programs, and statutes. The political program of Morena merits a review. For those that might wish to have a copy of this, I have one in Spanish. I can secure one in English. Please speak to Carl Kramer and we'll get them to you. The second point I'd like to raise is an article that came out in Politico in January of this year. And he raises a very good question. He raises here, Mexico's populace could mean trouble for Donald Trump. Right? And what this article was in the Politico, it reviewed, right, the emergence of Andrés Manuel López Obrador as someone who would have a different kind of policy, a policy of the working masses and the policy of the Mexican people being primary. He's stated very clearly there's a preferential option for the poor. And we in Morena believe that that is so true that we are going to make sure that as we move forward, that this policy is the preferential option for the poor and is in fact the policies that are enacted should we win. Currently the polls are very favorable. Andrés Manuel López Obrador from Morena was I think 13 percentage points above the other two candidates. The other two candidates are Ricardo Anaya from PAN and Jonathan Meade, I believe, from PRI. Those the numbers don't appear to be going to change, but let's talk about a persistent problem in Mexico before we wind up on the future that we may hope for. There's a persistent problem in Mexico and the U.S. here of fraud, election fraud. It happened in this country in the 2000s, right? That we know of. What we don't know is out there. But it happened in this country. But in Mexico, the stolen elections of 1998, the stolen election of 2006, the stolen election, although the margins were less narrow in 2012, led those of us who were then in the better day to some tough conclusions, right? And that was we had to evaluate what the political process was about. And there was an evaluation that all of the political parties, all of those that were in the establishment in any way, shape, or form, were bought off or compromised by the existing system, including all the political parties that who claimed to be on the left. And it was that decision that was made in 2014 that we could no longer to be part of a system that was so corrupt, that was inherently corrupt, that had been challenged so many times and been defeated so many times. To continue operating in that system was just crazy. It was absolutely nuts. And there was a political decision that was made to remove ourselves from the political establishment as it is and to offer a program for change. That's what Morena does. It offers a program for change that is viable and is needed and is called for by the peoples of the world in resistance to the money class and their armies that follow them wherever they want. The ending of this short presentation will be along the lines of what Nancy and Francisco raised. One, let's call racism what it is. Let's call abuse what it is. Let's quit being nice about it. Let's not say that it's an error, it's a mistake, it's a tendency. Oh no, it's sick. Yeah. The establishment and what we're facing, it's sick. And if we don't resist, we get sick. Yeah. So by resisting, we stay healthy. And the very process of resistance means working with others. I, for one, would like to invite you tonight, those who may have an interest. We have forms to join Morena out in front, excuse me. Out in front, we also have the latest newspaper from Morena. This is a publication of Morena in el Exterior. Morena is forming committees in the Exterior in the U.S. I'm working closely with one of them up in Santa Rosa, and we're fighting as we should for change. There's also another publication, this is in English, if you could please pick up these publications and on your way out and take them to your workplace. Let people know that there's a different path from war, from militarism, and from racist nonsense. The path is cooperation, economic cooperation, right, and dialogue. And the American people will be best served when there's a pro-labor, pro-people government in Mexico. For those tonight that would like to join Morena, we also have applications to join Morena tonight. I'll conclude with this question. Let's talk about populism. Right? Why is it that as a political process of change, we've seen so much of right-wing populism and so little of people's populism or people's politics? Why is it? Right? And it seems to me, to be honest, it's not because, it's because you have to make tough choices politically that aren't easy to make. It wasn't easy to make a decision to leave a political culture, however much you were used to. It wasn't easy. But there was a political evaluation that went on. I believe we must have the same political evaluation here. We should evaluate our allies. Are they still the same reliable allies they were before? When you call someone an ally, but when they abandon your interest, right? And then when they betray you, are they allies? Right? Are they allies? Well, I don't think so. I think we have to make very tough decisions about who are our real allies. And if you're fighting in the Democratic Party for change, and you're fighting for the right, for the people's agenda, then I'm willing to consider it. But if you're going along with this charade in political theater, I think it's a disservice to ourselves and, more importantly, to the future. Thank you very much. Whatever you do, we have a choice. The choice is simple. Change is coming. Do you want racist change? Oh. Do you want racist change? Because that's out there. Yeah. Or do you want people's change? People's change. And if you want people's change, do exactly what you're doing and do more of it. Learn, educate, organize, and fight. Thank you so much. I've been very pleased to be part of the program.
We are the power of the river. We are the rain within the storm. We are the force beneath the ocean. We are